7 o'clock. Yeah, let's start.
Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
I welcome everybody to the Finance Committee meeting on December 10th, 7 p.m. on virtual conference. So I have my agenda here. Okay. So does anybody have any questions before we go to the agenda? Okay. Does anybody have anything for open forum FAQ/announcements?
I'm just curious who caller 1 is, caller 2, and caller 3.
I dialed in from a mobile, so one of the lines may be me.
Okay.
Joe Jack's out here too.
Jake, if you want to mute one of them so we don't hear echo. Okay, Joe Targ, Fire Chief. Okay, so do we need to know who the caller 2 is, or we are good with the current attendees? Okay.
I guess that's fine. Yeah.
Thanks.
Move along.
Yeah. So let's move to our next agenda, that is to discussion on fire department overtime. We have a document. So, Joe, are you going to address that?
Yes, I can talk about this. Started anyway. Last year, obviously, when COVID started, our staffing was our overtime. Actually, for last fiscal budget, we actually returned money because people weren't taking any vacation time. But we decided with the COVID virus and the PPE and we were running short of PPE at the time. In the springtime last year, we ended up filling the shifts to 10, and that's kind of like where our goal was all along. Someday, hopefully, we'll get to 11 and drop down one before we fill it at 10. And the reason was we were able to staff both ambulances. Number one, we staffed them with both 2 paramedics, so we didn't do the swapping of apparatus. There was always someone to check the ambulances and be responsible for the equipment in there. But also, when they went on a call, it saved PPE because the paramedic in the back, or if there ended up being 2 in the back and someone else drove, it was just, it flowed better having the system. So we ended up filling to July 30 or June 30th this way. We ended up giving back overtime money last year on ambulance and on fire. When it came to the first, we realized operationally it was better to keep going this way. We've had some setbacks where we've had some cases amongst our crew, not from on the job, but just, when we got from the soccer team, and it happened. So we've had people out. So that's also affecting our overtime, but we've been trying to staff to 10, at least while the COVID is going on before we get some relief from a vaccine. It just operationally, it just seems better. We've definitely drawing down the fact that town meeting is not going to be till June now. We feel like if we want to continue this way, we need a little bit of money now, a little bit of relief and help. We do have reimbursement into FEMA for the money. A lot of towns did not get, were not allowed overtime because ours was unbudgeted, and the way we worded it to say we were staffing, we normally wouldn't fill that position, and we would drop down to 9 and we're filling to 10. The first reimbursement already made it through the hurdle where it's just matching up the paperwork, the checks and registers, munis reports and everything else. So, the money we're going to get back, he did allow us for that one person, and up until September 14th, from July 1st, we're also going to be allowed reimbursement for that. This next period from September 15th to December 31st, he says most likely they'll also allow us that one person a day for overtime for backfilling. So that's the good news. The bad news is our overtime accounts are pretty they're getting down there.
Okay.
I do have hopefully out there is I might be one or two of the paramedics, Jeff Duvenet or Zach Driscoll, along with Dave Greenwood. If any of them would like to speak and talk about how it affects them operationally, they can certainly chime in if you like.
Absolutely, Chief. It's Zach Driscoll. If you can hear me, okay.
Yes.
I apologize. I'm on a phone line and not through the platform. So, all right. I did want to add that one of the things that we've encountered with running into more and more COVID cases, it's typically our turnaround time for an ambulance run from dispatch to scene to the hospital typically takes us if it's a closer hospital, it's an hour. If it's a little more involved call, it's more like an hour and a half. The thing we've encountered with the COVID calls is it takes our ambulance out of service up to approximately 2.5 hours between decontamination. It's a pretty thorough process with that. Also, the delays that we encounter with the hospital, if you have someone who is diagnosed positive as COVID, and we know that going to the call, or if they're a patient that's under investigation, being a possible COVID patient, that adds a considerable amount of time. We're looking at closer to approximately 2.5 hours. So we're adding an hour gap in time of coverage, and so the volume of calls may not be as high as we would anticipate, but the amount of time that is involved to facilitate these calls is pretty arduous, including the fact that when the crews come back, they need to shower, decontaminate, change uniforms so that way that they're not in a position to infect the next patient that we encounter. So I'll leave it at that. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in, but that was one thing I kind of want to articulate is if we don't have a huge spike in calls, it's the amount of time involved now is definitely quite a bit more than in the past.
Okay. Thanks, Jack.
Absolutely. Thank you.
The other side of that I just wanted to add to is that I'm one of the EMS coordinators along with Zach, and what we found is that if we are not staffed to 10, then that second ambulance doesn't have a dedicated crew. And if you don't understand how our department typically works with 9, in order to staff that second ambulance, we have to bring an engine up from either Nabnasset Station or Forge Village Station to staff that truck. So from an administrative point, looking back on a day where we may have transported a patient who infected a crew, that crew could be any one of 8 people or 9 people on that shift. If that truck doesn't have a dedicated crew, when we run with 10, that second ambulance now has 2 dedicated paramedics to it. So any contamination of that crew or any equipment used by that crew is tracked by the people who are assigned to that piece of apparatus. What we found was that either through tracking, if we did have someone that had a potential exposure, we knew who the crew was, and also the crews were accountable for the amount of PPE that they were using. One set of PPE was designated for each provider on that vehicle, compared to if we are cross-staffing that truck, then engine 3 comes up and they staff the truck. They use a full set of PPE. Now engine 4 comes up for the next call to staff that truck, and you never know who's going to be available to staff that second ambulance when we have 9. It's kind of a fluid situation. So it affects not only who's on the truck, but the amount of PPE used and the amount of equipment used on each call.
Okay. So usually is it the case that you have enough PPEs for like a week in advance or a month in advance, or do you have to look for PPE inventory on a daily basis?
So currently our supply chain it got restored over the summer a little bit so that we were able to buy in bulk enough to kind of keep at least a few months worth of supplies. Back in the spring and into the summer, up until about July, we were operating on a week-by-week basis. We were ordering masks as fast as we were running out of them. The supply chain's kind of caught up. We've kind of caught up since then, and we have some stuff in stock. So we're comfortable where we're at right now, but should another spike come or another backorder of PPE come, we'll kind of have to deal with that as it comes. But as of right now, we're comfortable with our supply. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you. Joe, do you have anything else, or I can open committee for asking any questions, or?
I think they explained it very well. I mean, in our echo, we have that file storage area. We have it locked up in a couple places in the station, our PPE. We're supposed to get a big delivery through the state, and then we found out that was commandeered by the federal government. So we're hoping for a second one to come in, and that'll be a relatively large order of KN95 masks and some coveralls and stuff. So we're hoping the next between Christmas and New Year's that we'll actually get a good delivery of that too from the state. But yeah, I'm open to questions.
So, anyone from committee?
I'd like to ask the chief a question. It's John Cunningham. You talk about the PPE and you're having fewer calls. So could you kind of walk me through and explain again why we have the overtime and the relationship of the PPE with that?
Well, the PPE, you got to remember, it's not just for ambulance calls, John. If we go to someone's house for an alarm or a business, anywhere we go, and if it's a COVID positive house that we know ahead of time, we're burning PPE on those calls. Any kind of fire call, any kind of public assist call, any calls that we're doing. The call numbers, I probably should pull them. It was very quiet in April. We did get some CARES Act money, about $18,000 that we could use to offset our what we took in. That's the only time CARES Act money could be used as an offset. But you know, the calls that we do right now are more complicated and they take longer.
Well, you know, my concept of overtime is that you work past your shift. In other words, if you got a 12-hour shift or 8-hour shift, you work past your shift. That's the overtime. So they're extending their shifts in order to get this done?
Well, it's just to keep that staffing level up. Like Jeff and Zach explained, you know, is to keep it at 10, then you have 2 dedicated people in the ambulance. You know, the other thing, like we talked about, would be, you know, the forge engine or the NAB engine, you know, would be out of service for 2 hours because they'd be at the hospital that time decontaminating, and they wouldn't be able to respond. So that's the other downside of it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Heather?
Maybe this is a question for Dan, but how does this work when things are reimbursed? Does it go to this account or does it go to the general fund? And
Dan can answer that. I believe it comes in by wire, but it goes to the general fund.
Actually, we have separate accounts set up for both FEMA reimbursement and CARES Act reimbursement. They're Fund 250. It's separate from the general fund. Essentially, what happens is we put in for reimbursement, we get the money in there, and then we are spending this money out of the general fund. But as we're reimbursed, we're actually journalizing those entries to this federal fund. So basically, whatever we expended should be covered by the amount of revenue that we get in.
so the chief had said that some of this was eligible for reimbursement. Will that get transferred here?
Yep. So on this spreadsheet here, if you look at the less estimated FEMA CARES Act funding, right now we have $123,000 there estimated for the fire department budget, which is the general fund, and about $66,000 for the ambulance enterprise fund to be reimbursed on December 30th. So that's our estimate right now. So, Corey, if I can just explain a little bit more. The issue is that the funding turns off December 30th for the CARES Act and 31st for the FEMA reimbursement. And to continue backfilling the shifts to 10 is going to require supplemental appropriation for the general fund to do that. So we don't want to just go ahead and do that and build up a deficit and say we have an emergency. We wanted to bring that to you today to let you know and get your input on this. If that's something that actually the FinCom might be willing to do a FinCom reserve transfer January to help supplement that. Basically, we're trying to get to May. May is when we're allowed to do departmental transfers in between budgets with a vote from the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen. And of course, we don't have our town meeting until June. So there's no real other funding opportunities right now for the fire department except for the Finance Committee.
So I have a question. So at this point, the deficit is $158,319, right? And is that $61,911, $991 is an excess, or that's also a deficit?
I have to unmute myself. So Hari, basically, this is a projection for the future. What we're estimating is that overtime is going to cost about $12,000 more per week from here to the end of the year. So we haven't overspent anything at this point.
Okay.
If we keep up at that clip, we expect the general fund to have a negative balance of $135,000 at the end of the year, which of course we can't do. We can't spend what we don't have in there. And that can be offset. We could apply more shifts to the ambulance enterprise. If you see here, we had an estimate in our model of $1,500 per week for the ambulance enterprise, which is basically one shift per week. So when you net those out, our estimate at this point in time, this will change on a weekly basis, but we're looking at about a deficit of $83,000 overall at this point.
Next question is, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Is there any foreseeable change to that number drastically? I'm not saying like 2,000 or 5,000, but if, let's say, if some money is appropriated somehow, is there going to be another subsequent request like this, or we have considered enough risks and deviations that we will stay within that number?
So we can't exceed that number. Basically, anything can happen. It's dangerous out there right now, especially for the firefighters. If we have a, knock on wood, if we have a minor outbreak of COVID within the fire department, that will drive up costs because we have to backfill those shifts and keep the town safe. So basically, we need to be very careful with how we manage this money. $83,000 to get to the end of the year. I mean, if we were to put forward a FinCom request, we'd probably do so in January, so we don't start putting, creating a deficit there. But we probably won't ask for the full amount at that time. It'll probably be a portion of it, just to, there's a chance federal funding could kick in again, in which case we don't want to draw down the entire FinCom reserve to fund this at that point. So we don't know what's going to happen. And so hopefully within the next few weeks, we have some more clarity, but we wanted to get this on your radar at this time too.
Okay.
So this is just to see what may come in the next few weeks. And if there is something that comes, there will be another meeting for FinCom reserve fund transfer. Okay, Heather, you're on mute.
Yes, great. Dan?
Sorry. This is only personnel
ahead.
costs. What about the rest of the expenses for fire? Just because I saw that there were some issues with repairs.
We're actually, I know it, we had a couple of big bills. We just paid one today for Greenwood apparatus of about $4,000. We're actually on the expenses. We are running pretty good. We're below where we should be for this part of the year. Medical supplies are actually a little bit down. The expenses on that because of we've been hitting the Town Cares Act, the COVID account for PPE and equipment. So we've been charging it to there. So we are doing okay on the expense budgets, both of them.
Dan, could you tell, when would we run out of money if we don't do anything? And then just kind of walk us down through here, how many weeks, what we need to do in the meantime, and when do we need to make this decision or make this transfer?
So the FEMA funding stops come end of December. So I would say we should probably reconsider this in January. Just so we don't keep spending money that we don't have appropriated yet. We'd feel much better if we had the appropriation and then manage that amount going forward. So.
Hey, Jody. Yeah, Jody, go ahead.
Hi, I apologize. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I did not have computer audio, so now I've called in on the phone. I apologize for missing, but I want to say that I fully support this request. And I don't know if many of you know, but actually Westford is being upgraded or downgraded, however you want to state it, to a red community tomorrow. So we are in, a serious situation here. We've had roughly 14 to 16 new positives per day. I've had several employees be either close contacts or positives, and this is a struggle right now. So the last thing I want to do is go down in staff for our fire department. So I fully support this. And if you have any questions, I do apologize for my technical difficulties.
Christina, and then Jake.
Yeah, Dan, what's our Fincom reserve balance right now?
$138,500.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think we should probably look at this again in January when you have more information and come with an actual ask, correct? I mean,
yes, part of that is, there is still a chance that perhaps the CARES Act might get extended. If that's the case, of course, we'll utilize that instead. So
right.
Yes, I agree with that logic.
Okay. Thanks.
Jake?
Yeah, is there a need for us to do this sooner than January, right? If we don't want to spend money that's not appropriated, and if this runs out the end of this year, it just seems like we're playing with fire a little bit. So I'm wondering if there is a need to appropriate funding or approve a transfer request sooner rather than later.
Dan?
So I think we'll be okay because we are submitting all the expenses being incurred for overtime for that extra shift back to FEMA and CARES Act. It's once January starts, that's when we're not being reimbursed anymore. So I think we're okay through December. If we meet, in the first half of January, I think that will be sufficient to put in a request at that time.
All right, thanks. Clear your calendars.
Any further discussion on the fire department overtime discussion? Okay. So we will move to the next topic.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Review of June 12th, 2021 annual town meeting schedule.
I can speak to this if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I'm sure all of you have heard the Board of Selectmen did set a date for the annual town meeting. It's scheduled for June 12th of 2021. So from there, we created a timeline. Patty and I were working on this, and we submitted to the Board of Selectmen before their last November meeting. And if you want, I can give you a couple highlights on what we're thinking here.
Sure.
So, all right, I'd like to start from the back on this because we tend to work backwards from the annual town meeting timeline, if you don't mind.
Excuse me, Dan, could you just call them the select board, please?
Select board, that's twice now I've done that, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You can write it down on a piece of paper in front of me. So here we have the town meeting in June. The warrant needs to be posted by Friday, June 4th at the latest. You see we have the League of Women Voters meeting that we usually have to, give information to the public about the articles out there. We have a tentative date for the motions meeting. So for Fincom, the book needs to be mailed out by June 1st per the town bylaws. So that's one of our important dates there. And going up here, it usually takes about 10 days for the printer to actually print the book. So what we have here is, potential meeting on Thursday, May 20th for the Finance Committee to, vote on any remaining articles, perhaps get those recommendations into the book, and then first thing Friday morning, I can ship the book to the printer so they can begin working on that. So again, these were just draft meetings. I know we didn't talk about this yet, but it's easier to have a template out there for us to discuss, and we can always change the dates of meetings. I had tentative another meeting before that on May 13th for the Fincom to review articles. It's about a month before town meeting. Let's see here, going back. And then of course we have the budget hearings. So in speaking earlier this year, I know there was, we wanted to have 5 meetings was the consensus I heard from the committee. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But we did have, I did schedule 5 meetings out there on dates that can be discussed, obviously. So let me go to the beginning of the Fincom meeting. Let me back up a little bit. So Jody is supposed to present the budget on February 9th, just Tuesday night, that she does at the Board of Selectmen meeting. We usually post Fincom for that. And then we do have extra time this year, which is fantastic. Normally we're rushed trying to get those first questions out to the department so they have time to answer. And we usually have like 10 days to do that. Here we have, how many days is that? It's about 24, 25 days to get those initial questions out if you choose to do so. So the first Fincom meeting, the budget hearing, I have down here is March 4th and March 11th for the first 2. And then a week off, and then we have a meeting on Thursday, March 25th and Thursday, April 1st. And then a wrap-up meeting on Thursday, April 8th to discuss, like normally we do like the capital presentation, any revenue, anything like that in that last meeting. So, I mean, if you want to discuss the meeting dates, Jody.
Good. Go ahead, Jody.
So, Dan, I know I had asked about the school committee and see what date they present that up. Are you having trouble hearing me?
Jody, can you keep one of them on mute and one of them on talking? You have computer and the phone.
Okay, I don't think I have computer audio. I'm only on the phone, but maybe it's feedback from others. But
No.
I know I had talked. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, now is okay.
Okay, I had asked Dan if you could reach out to Ingrid and the school committee about what date they wanted to meet. I don't know if we firmed that up. I don't see it on this schedule. Not that schedule. I'm talking this schedule.
You're talking about the finance committee schedule then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Did
one
we
next.
firm that up?
That's
They're
it.
not listed.
So who's
Jody,
not,
did they get back to you with the, I'm sorry, did they get back to you with the date for that confirmation?
Not to me, no. So I think, I thought we were going to reach out to them. Remember we talked about that?
Yep. And
So we need to get confirmed and get that on this calendar. Because right now there's no school committee on here discussion on, we need to have probably a couple of those penciled in this schedule.
oh yeah.
So I would recommend the school committee be the 3rd meeting. That gives time for preparation as well as time for follow-up. I'm just throwing it out there, but
Which meeting, Hari?
March 20. I like school committee to be with Fincom on March 25th.
That seems kind of late to me, to be honest. It's going to be a tough year, and if we have issues, I thought we had talked about maybe March 4th, Dan. Do you remember that?
yeah, maybe one of the first 2 meetings they could attend, and then we'll most likely have follow-up questions. So that gives them time to prepare in between for another meeting, one of the later meetings.
I think we talked about maybe March 4th, and then they could come back with answers.
You think they're going to be ready? Because I think last time it was a struggle to get them ready.
They're supposed to get me their budget in late January, so it will be part of my presentation on the 9th.
Okay.
Well, unless I don't have the information, but that's what they committed to. So we just need to firm that up.
So Dan, are you going to take a first stab at assigning departments to the meeting?
Yes, I can do that if you like. I can send out a draft schedule for comment. And, typically what we've done is only requested that the departments that you have questions on actually attend the meeting. So basically like the week before, I'll reach out to you and see which departments you want to invite in. We usually invite all the major departments. So, any of the smaller departments that you want to see, just I'll be in contact with you to see if you want them to attend.
Okay. Any questions? Heather? Mute?
I don't remember the history, but if we're going to discuss not doing the Fincom book, can we maybe talk about that next month or sometime very soon?
Yeah, that's part of my thing too. Yeah, I think the book is, first thing is book is needed or not, and do we mail the book or not?
I thought we'd already made that decision last time.
Hold on.
Go ahead. Lead the way, Jody.
Yes, so we had talked about having a bylaw change. It is required by the bylaws to print that book and mail it. My recollection is none of you liked our idea, so we pulled it off the warrant. So it is required by the bylaws, and we will be printing and mailing it until if and when we go back to town meeting and ask that. But if that's my recollection, is none of you were happy with our proposal, and so we pulled it.
Jody, let's say if I'm asking hypothetically, if we want to have a book and made a copies of them available at library and town hall, would that a bylaw change?
Yes. Right now,
And-
the bylaw requires that we mail it to every household. That's what we proposed. I don't know if you all remember this. Some of you are new, but I don't think we had fleshed it out enough with you. And so we pulled that because I didn't want to go to town meeting with you all telling us you didn't like the idea.
Yeah, I remember it.
Maybe that would be one of Fincom meeting topics to come up with what would this look like in future. And if that's so, we can, is Fincom allowed to propose a bylaw or it has to go through somebody else? Yes or no?
No, please do. I actually proposed this about
Okay.
11 or 12 years ago, and town meeting shot me down. So
Okay. So I will probably put a full agenda item next time and discuss about it and put that to bed, so to speak. Okay.
Okay.
Anyone have questions?
Looks like Jake has something.
Okay, Jake?
Do we need to schedule a FinCom meeting for January to address the fire request from earlier?
Yeah. We probably will club that with fire and Fincom.
I just want to make sure it makes its way onto the document here.
Yeah.
So any more discussion on this agenda item?
Yeah, were we going to vote to accept this or approve it, or do we want to delay this or just go ahead and approve it as is? Or as changed?
The agenda wording says review and approve finance committee meeting schedule. I guess that's a motion, right? Jody?
the only problem is we don't have the school committee on here yet. But you can approve it the way it is, and we can always amend it and add the school committee.
Well, that's not fully baked yet, right? That's approving that makes no sense. I would rather revisit this in our January meeting.
Yeah, I think that's good. January meeting for this.
I'm with you on that too, Larry.
Okay. So I guess we will not take any action on the item. We reviewed the 7:30 review and approve finance committee meeting schedule, but we're not approving it. Any more discussion on that town meeting schedule and the finance committee meeting schedule?
No.
Okay. Heather? Mute.
Since and I'm not really sure when to bring this up, since we're talking about adding the January meeting, I almost feel like at that January meeting and then maybe in that week off, we might need to review where things are budget to actual so far in the year. I mean, I have no idea how things are going. I mean, Jody said she had people that are sick. I could see other departments running into trouble too. I feel like we kind of need to know where things stand before we wrap everything up.
Yeah, I was going to propose that we include that in any kind of January meeting, and they would get an update on the financial situation. And look at the overtime in the fire department. I think that's a good idea.
Okay, we are quickly filling up January. Okay, so the next agenda item is discuss approach to joint budget hearings.
Yeah, I suggested this article, and I did it because of the experiences we had this last year. And first of all, we were on a system that didn't allow us to see everybody like we can right now. I mean, it's great to be able to have a meeting and see all the participants right in front of us, and we can address each article. Part of it was because I felt that in that case, it was led by the Board of Selectmen, and Finance Committee was kind of backseat. We couldn't see each other, and I just felt, at least I felt, that we need to change the format a little bit. And I think we should look to, if you look at the bylaws of the town, the budgetary process is really a Fincom process mostly. And to me, I think Fincom should be chair of the meeting, and then we should convene the meeting and adjourn the meeting as Fincom and move in that direction. And that's just my opinion after going through the handbook, looking at the Massachusetts general laws and looking at the town charter. That's our job. And once the budget is presented by the town manager, then I think it's incumbent upon the finance committee to take the lead and move this thing through to town meeting. That's just my opinion after reading that. I don't know whether you guys have had a chance to do that. Take a look at the charter and take a look at what the Fincom handbook says. But anyway, and what Mass General Law says. And I think it's really approach that I think we ought to take. Because last time we kind of adjourned, we kind of convened as a joint meeting, but never really individually or officially as a Fincom in some cases, or adjourned that way. So I think we need to take a look at that approach, and we don't have to make a decision tonight. That's just my recommendation, and we take a look at that and make that approach. And I noticed that our schedule says Fincom / select board meeting. And I think that the chairman of the Fincom should run that meeting.
So John, first one is, it should be primarily Fincom. Select board will participate in the meeting, and Fincom chair should be the moderator for that meeting. And does anybody have any other feedback / amendments to how we run this one? Dennis?
Yeah, I just want to second John Cunningham's comments. I think that my recollection of the operations of the Fincom over the years reflected his view of it. Those meetings should be chaired by us, and it should not be that we're just an appendage of the particular meeting. We have to have a certain independence, and I think we're required to have a certain independence. And I would concur with his assessment. I think it's a great idea myself.
I want to add one of things which we have discussed throughout the years is to have a breakout meetings, which meaning if there is particular article is being discussed, if Fincom wanted to discuss the article while everybody else is not participating, that should be allowed, right? So because sometimes, like if audience will not speak when Fincom is deliberating, so but when a joint meeting, Board of Selectmen can chime in. What we want to is we want to make sure that Fincom has the independence for that duration to discuss among themselves. Dennis?
Yeah, Harry, it's very important to understand, like John said, the role of the Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is the equivalent of the House or Senate Budget Committee in the legislature. I mean, we represent the town meeting. We're not part of the executive branch, which the Board of Selectmen are. So it's very important that we maintain that separation of powers and that distinctiveness. That's part of the function. So, you know, yes, I think we should not be asking whether we should do things. We should be stating, look, this is what we're going to do. This is going to be our approach, and we move from there.
Okay. Any other inputs? Dennis or Dan?
Hi, it's not so much on how you run the meetings, but under this topic about the questions that the Fincom has sent out before the meetings that the department heads answer. I just want to make sure that's something this committee still wants to do. Is that? Okay.
I would say we could continue that. And I think it's an important thing. The thing I missed last time is it almost seemed like we didn't have enough time to go back and ask it a second time. We had some questions that kind of were handed off to another department or handed off some other way. And it didn't seem like we had time or the opportunity to push back and get the answer we were looking for, or at least an answer that we thought was appropriate. So I think we still got the questions in there. That's going to be one of my questions, is whether or not we had time for the questions. And I think we do. I think that extra time that you've allowed in the schedule, Dan, is great. I think we can have time to get the questions, maybe re-ask them, redirect them or something, but be better prepared for that first meeting. And perhaps those meetings will go a lot more smoothly because we've had that time.
Go ahead, Dan.
So I can come up with a schedule for the January meeting if you want to review that at that time for timing of when questions are due and when I can add that to the agenda.
Thanks, John. Jody?
So can you hear me okay?
Yes.
It's important that, you know, you understand and the new members have reviewed the charter. And so this is a town manager form of government. I am appointed by the Board of Selectmen. I am charged with preparing a budget town-wide with a number for the schools, and then I present it to the Board of Selectmen listen to me, Select Board. Sorry, Dan. Select Board and the Finance Committee. And then if you all disagree with the numbers and the budget that I presented, then you have the opportunity to talk about that, see if you could change my mind, the Select Board mind, so on and so forth. And if not, and then you can go to town meeting and you have a different recommendation. But the budget is not the Finance Committee budget, which I think John kind of stated. You're an advisory committee to the town and the town meeting. This is my 13th budget here. We've done it many different ways. I think what happened years ago is there were meetings of department heads with the finance committee, and there were separate meetings with the select board. And one side didn't necessarily know what the other side was saying. And so it was not, very conducive to understanding where we were all going. And then once you all get together, you might change your mind. So at that point, we changed them into joint meetings, which were chaired by the finance committee, and the Board of Selectmen, the select board, back then Board of Selectmen, attended those meetings and listened or gave input as they saw fit. So I don't think anybody's tried to take that away from you all. I think last year, before COVID, was complex. And I do think the chair of the select board did run one of the meetings that was about primarily the school budget number, because I think she was trying to find agreement between the three groups that were not in agreement. But no one's tried to take that away from you. I think it's just, if you don't understand what the select board is directing me to do, then how can you weigh in on your opinions, So I just think it's important to all work together. So, if you want to be in charge of those, that's great. But it doesn't make sense to me to have separate meetings without the select board's input into what you're talking about.
John?
I wasn't talking about separate meetings. I was just talking about the way that we handle those meetings. And I kind of respectfully disagree in the sense that the select board is an executive in the town. And if you look at the way the bylaws read, once the Board of Selectmen, we are supposed to pay attention to the policy and go with the policy of the Board of Selectmen. But it shows that the Fincom, once you present the budget, then we've got to take that and get it ready for town meeting. And
No, I completely disagree. You don't take it and get it ready for town meeting. You can take your own opinion and your own advice and present that at town meeting. You don't change the budget. The finance committee can make recommendations, but it doesn't become the finance committee budget in this town.
I didn't say it changed the budget, but anyway, I think
I think
you got to take a look at the handbook that we've been looking at and decide how we want to make this thing work. And I still think the FinCom, once the budget is presented, then we should chair the meetings. Like you said, we used to do it, and we do it.
Let me say this, right? I think the issue is much subtle. It's not about it's not about separate meetings. Joint meetings are okay, but every committee has their own responsibility, and that responsibility should be able to be carried out in the meeting vehicle that is conducted. So as long as like if finance committee is deliberating for like 5 minutes on, let's say 63 Main Street, right? We expect for that 5 minutes, only finance committee, as a finance committee, keeping their blinders on, be able to deliberate on it with the information that's already been provided, right? So I think there is no challenge about who has the power, or the power is being drawn from other committee or anything like that. It's just a sort of logistics. I think we will be able to, the things that we have proposed there, like is being FinCom able to chair the meeting and be able to have independent discussions. Those things will achieve what John is proposing. And we just have to be mindful of keeping those conventions around. I think that should be agreeable. But I think, Jody, budget is yours, and select board has the executive authority on the town's finances committee and how they run. Budget recommendations, finance committee should be able to do it by themselves.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. This isn't about power. It's about following the charter And the
Mhm.
charter me with preparing a budget, and then we talk about it. You have the full right to go in and dispute the numbers and recommend different numbers. I'm not taking away from that at all, but it doesn't become your budget to propose. You are advisory. So I to follow the charter. It's worked for 13 years. Like to finish out my career here with following the charter. You want to propose a charter change, that's great too. So
I'm not proposing a charter change. I think the committee would do well to take a look at that charter. You look at the finance committee part of the charter, and it enumerates pretty much what our task is supposed to be. So,
Christina?
Change the charter.
Can I just make a suggestion that maybe we take this offline, maybe between Hari, Jody, and John, and possibly myself, and just sort of see where the differences are?
Let's you, me, and John get together and see what the difference between what difference between our understanding of charter and what we're doing and what our difficulties are. And I think they are outlined pretty much what John mentioned at the beginning of this one. Once we have that, we can sit with Jody. Just have a pre-meeting before we sit with Jody.
We can do that in the January meeting. That could be part of the January meeting if we meet in between now and then.
Yeah. So so John, Christina, and Hari to meet separately to get what we want to present in the January meeting, and that wouldn't trip any bylaws like our open meeting laws. Okay. Is there any discussion on joint budget schedule? Okay. Move on to FY21 financial update.
Okay, I'll put this screen back up here. So just briefly, just to let you know how we're doing in FY21. We just submitted our tax rate recap yesterday. So hopefully we're going to hear back within a day or so to have that tax rate set. So basically, the tax levy is a tax levy. Nothing is changing with what we've seen before. With state aid, the budget just went to the governor's desk, so hopefully that's signed soon. Nothing much has changed within that budget. It's very close to what we had predicted from the very get-go. So hopefully that's signed soon and that's just over with. Now, local revenue is where we have a couple of variances so far year to date. Talking this summer, I think you all probably remember that we were talking about the motor vehicle excise and how the actual in FY20 was a little bit low because the select board, Jody, we actually delayed the due date of the bills from May 1st to June 1st. That gave them extra month to catch up, and basically we didn't send out demand bills until July. So we were collecting more of the motor vehicle bills later. Now, the two accounts that really are being impacted by COVID are the motel and hotel excise and the meals tax. We've only gotten in one payment so far back at the end of September for the meals tax. And we're about 38% down of where we were the last year at this time. Again, it's just one payment, and this projection was spread out through the entire year. So we're looking at about $186,000 deficit just based on that limited data. The hotel and motel excise is down 69% from last year, just after that one payment as well. We received this right before special town meeting. So that projected throughout the year is almost a $300,000 deficit. So we need to, recognize this early on and keep track of this as we move forward. We do have a couple other local revenue accounts that are actually tracking pretty well. Our penalties and interest on taxes, we're looking like we're up about $24,000 on the year. And then the departmental revenue from the cemetery is up about $10,000. We're keeping an eye on that as well. So overall, we have a general fund projected deficit for FY21 of $390,000. And again, we had the issue with the recap and the recreation enterprise, where the revenues in FY20 were only 850,000. So we had a gap based on the budget that was passed in FY21. Of course, the select board voted to transfer 475,000 from stabilization to plug that gap for the year on Tuesday night. So we were able to submit the recap once they did that. So right now, the deficit for FY21 is about 390,000.
So how would that be handled?
So the budget's set. Basically, anything in excess of the revenue budget closes out the free cash. Anything, if we don't meet our target, it takes away from free cash at the end of the year. So we don't actually have to take any action at this point.
Thanks, Dan. Heather?
For our next meeting, can we get your free cash update with these numbers flowing through?
Sure. But so I have the free cash for FY21, which shows our actual town meeting votes that, we appropriate from free cash. Is that what you mean?
Well, I think in that schedule, don't you have like what you expect to pay, what we expect to pay for capital and stuff like that? But is this a line item in that sheet?
This is not. This will impact next year's free cash if this keeps up.
But we need to have it at year end for next year?
Yeah,
right?
So this deficit will help determine what our starting free cash is next year. So we need to be cognizant of it, but we don't necessarily build it into this year's free cash. If we think that, estimated closeouts and are not going to be there to cover this deficit, then yes, that would be an issue. We want to have positive free cash at the end of the year, go back. So, but it's not part of the actual FY21 free cash schedule, if that makes sense. It's a consideration for next year. Am I explaining that well enough?
I think I have to think about it.
What's the balance on the free cash now?
I'm sorry, John?
What's the balance on the free cash now at the moment?
Give me 1 second. I will look that up. So it's a big file. It just takes a second. We'll zoom in on this. All right, so our current balance is just over 2.6 million. That includes the appropriations that we had at the special town meeting. And this should actually be. And then the projection for.
But you got 4 million there for ICE.
Yep, let me fix that real quick. That's 400,000 is our typical deficit. Snow and ice deficit for the year. So we have 400 for snow and ice, 110 for perchlorate, and 1.5 million earmarked for capital, and that would leave us with 607,000 remaining at the end of the year.
So the 398 would come out of that 607, but after the fact, right?
Yeah, it'd be in the certification for the FY22 free cash. So it's not actually going to be appropriated from that balance. It'll be calculated in the FY22 free cash certification.
But we would need to at least make sure we have that amount in the ending cash. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say is somehow we need to kind of keep track of that on the side because we want that ending free cash to cover the 398 plus all that other stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I'm almost thinking we need to run it with estimates past FY21 and or FY22 end. FY22 end. So like June 30th, 2021, and then the future amounts that would come out of that down below.
Yeah, there's a lot more variables to free cash than, just the closeouts. I mean, it's, balances and like tax receivables and things like that. So it is hard to predict what free cash will actually be. We're just looking high level at, closeouts versus potential revenue deficits. That seems pretty easy to do. So.
Okay.
Beth?
Well, I was watching the select board meeting and there was the question of the liquor license issue. So I guess that wouldn't be the current budget. Would that be kind of the next budget that would impact if we don't charge the full amount for liquor licenses? I don't know how that's going to impact.
Yeah, so that actually impacts the, let me bring up that budget again. The licenses and permits budget. So this one actually varies quite a bit because it includes all of our building permits, which can go up and down, as time goes on. So the estimated impact of giving a 50% discount to those, establishments is about $36,000. So if the select board plans to bill the full amount the following year, we could probably support that with a vote by the select board with the DOR if we want to, say our licenses and permits are going to go up by $36,000 the following year. We could probably support that. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So the free cash is running low, and I'm asking, what if, we do not have enough free cash? What will be the option beyond the free cash?
So we do have available funds. The board of selectmen set a budget policy that they want to keep 5% of the general fund operating budget in reserves. So we do have stabilization funds to the tune of over $5 million. We have some capital stabilization funding still available. And we have health insurance stabilization, about $672,000 in that account. So we do have other reserves out there if we run low on free cash. It's just, a matter of how to utilize those moving forward to make sure, we have a sustainable approach.
Jody?
Yeah, so we are looking at lots of different things. If you recall, we did reduce town budgets by over $500,000 in October at the town meeting, and right now we're looking at other reductions. We are looking at pay-as-you-throw, as some of you know. We're looking at health insurance. We're looking at layoffs. There's lots of different things we're looking at to try to reduce the deficit. And of course, capital will be impacted, and we know that. We will not have as much for capital this year, and we're hoping for some federal aid. But so we're paying close attention to this, meeting almost daily to discuss it, and we will have more information in the future for you and the select board.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Jody.
Christina?
Jody, can you just clarify, so the changes that you're looking at, are those going to be FY21 to try to close this $390,000 deficit that's estimated?
So I have not brought this forward yet, and we're continuing to analyze, but I am looking at reductions for 21 to help with close the gap and set us up in a better position for 22. So I think most of you know we did lay off, I believe it was 11 or 12, right, it's been a long day. We furloughed those recreation department workers, and we're looking at other opportunities right now, not just staff and expenses, but as I mentioned, health insurance, craft, different opportunities that I would bring forth to the boards to recommend. I think I mentioned at the annual town meeting, we don't need town meeting direction to not spend money. So even though it was appropriated in budget, that doesn't need to. We're already doing that in many areas right now. Many open positions this year, more than I've ever had, and we're evaluating the position before we're filling it. So.
For our January meeting, would it be possible to get in our FY21 update a little bit more of a year to date so we can balance what the deficits are on the revenue side and also see what the expenses look like to see if they kind of even out or what the gap is between those?
Yes, I think you mentioned you'd like to have that information. We're happy to give you that.
Okay, thanks.
Harry? Hey, Harry?
Dennis?
Jody, I know you may not be able to answer this question completely, but just you can give us a little indication. As you know, the school department canceled or significantly curtailed winter sports in the academy, and now those folks, I would assume, have paid some sort of athletic fees. What's going to be the disposition of those fees, if you know, if you could explain?
I can't answer that. I'm not included in those decisions. Dan, I don't know if you can answer that, but I cannot answer that.
No, I also can't answer. It's a question for the schools. Sorry.
Okay. Any further questions on this topic?
I don't have a question. I just had a comment. Jody, I just wanted to say, I personally appreciate what you've been doing and what you've been going through as far as trying to make this thing work. And I don't envy you your position at all in trying to do this. And I hope we can preserve as many of our essential people as we can, and any kind of layoffs and things can be minimized. But I appreciate your efforts in this. I can't think of anybody better to do it.
Thank you, John. I mean, I am looking at areas that I don't believe would affect service levels, and we have not even gotten up to what the recommendation is on public safety. After this year, I still have 1 police officer left to hire and 3 firefighters. So I'm not looking at public safety. They're critical to get us through this pandemic, but we are looking for any other opportunities. We've already combined several positions, so happy to keep you posted. And it is a challenge. I'm not going to lie. Today was a challenging day, so I apologize if I'm a little bit less congenial than usual. So.
Jody said she'd give us an update on expenses. Can we ask the schools? I feel like that's a really dark area where we have no idea where they stand, if they have any estimates on what it would take to get them to the end of the year, and if that's within their budget.
Yeah, we can reach out.
Do you know if they are meeting? They were supposed to have a subcommittee meeting, I think, and I thought we had someone from, was Hari maybe going to those meetings? The subcommittee of the, I don't know whatever happened to that, if they're meeting or not, to keep track of the school budget.
I have not been attending, but there's only one meeting that I saw posted but cancelled. I don't know if they have met anything after. Maybe I'll just get an update. The way, Krishna, 1 minute. The way they said was only people from school committee can be on the meeting. Everybody else can attend as an audience. So we only get updates from the town management system. Go ahead, Christina.
So they've been having the school finance subcommittee meetings every other Monday morning. I think there's been maybe 3 or 4 of them. And I've been attending. There hasn't been a lot of information.
Thank you for keeping on track of it, top of that.
I think we should request an update from them for our January meeting if we can.
That's what Dan will reach out. Anything else? Okay, we came to the 8:10 election of finance committee officers. So I am the chair, Christina is vice chair, and Dennis is the clerk. And I'd like to continue. So Christina. Yes,
So I
John.
think John has something to add.
This was kind of my idea, and you guys have been at it since the fall of 2019. And my thinking on this was either if we replace if we elected new officers now, we probably want to elect them for about 18 months instead of a year, because we've got June the 30th coming up. And I've had some thoughts about maybe we should continue the current officers in the finance committee. I'd recommend that we continue the current, and then in June, after we've had changes, no telling what the moderator is going to do as far as appointees are concerned. Some people will be moving on or not, or wanting to continue, and that we maybe put this off until the end of June and get together then. And then the normal process of most committees I've been on is the vice chair moves up to the chair and clerk moves up to the vice, and just kind of rotation every year. And I think that's a good idea, because you've been in the hot seat long enough, Harry. But I know you love it. But I think after giving it some thought, I would think we might want to continue this until June, and then elect a new, just do the normal yearly election so that we can rotate through the leadership. So that's my thinking on it.
Okay. Well, what is other thoughts?
I have a question. Are there rules that cover that timing? I mean, is John's suggestion even feasible? I read a whole bunch of stuff right when I started, but I don't even know if that is an option, or if we just are needing to follow some guidelines to do stuff on certain deadlines.
We get to that. So Jody?
I would say that most committees, after they're reappointed in June by the select board or moderator in your case, or reelected, then they typically reorganize at that time. Some seem to take a little bit more time, and there's a couple that never do it. So, but I would say the majority do look at that after the new membership in either May by election or in June by the select board, or moderator.
I like the rotation idea. That actually works well. If we are looking to do the June rotation, we should not have elections now, because we would be asking officers to replace less than 1 year, right? So what we would do is we'll continue until, we'll delay the elections until the new board is formed, so to speak. Usually June is the one time when most of the terms expire and moderator reappoints. So we probably want to say first meeting after July 1st will be always the new finance committee group that will reappoint their officers.
I'll second that.
John, you're on mute.
Is that a motion? Would you make a motion to do that?
I move it.
No, I don't think. Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Do we need to?
It's always a good idea.
Okay, so that would be a motion to delay the officers election until first meeting after June 30th, 2021.
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
Everybody in favor of it? I will call from Heather,
Aye.
Christina,
Aye.
John,
Yes.
Levi,
Aye.
Beth,
Aye.
Jeff,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Dennis,
Aye.
and I. Okay.
Sounds good.
We have one more item, that is to approve the minutes of October 17th.
Did you want board updates?
We haven't done anything.
Okay, sorry. Where is that? Yeah, board updates.
Have not met with public safety yet, if that's what you mean. Not yet.
Yeah, I've been in school committee a couple of meetings, but probably Christina is in more. Who is Jake? Is the other school committee person? Do you guys have any updates on school committee?
So, I mean, I have been in some of the meetings. It's not officially my liaison, but I've been going. So right now it seems like Bill and the leadership team are putting together their budget. They're expecting to have it in January. I assume that's when the school committee will see it. They have been looking at some reductions. I don't know if you saw that they reduced the number of buses recently. They're looking at transportation. It's going to be a tight budget for next year. I'm actually on the next one too, the Town and School Safety Task Force. We are working towards getting input from the community on the social emotional piece. Specifically, we've been talking about adjustment counselors in the schools and a townwide wellness coordinator. We're still going to do a little more work before we go out to the community on that. There's also going to be a small team put together to look at the question of, do we need additional SROs at the schools or not? And Tom Clay and Scott Hazelton are preparing to give the select board an update in January.
Any questions on that?
I have a question. Christina, I engaged in the last meeting that you had, I listened in on, and I had a couple of questions. Can I get a copy of that briefing that Scott and Tom were going to give draft? Because I wanted to comment on a couple of things, and he said he'd give me a copy, but I didn't contact him. I just wondered if you had it or that's releasable.
The PowerPoint that they were walking through?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could send that to you.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Sure.
Tom wanted me to get a comment on a couple of things.
Capital?
Do you want to, Dennis, did you have a question on what we've already done? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I just wanted to add to Christina's comment about the SROs. There's a police reform bill pending in the legislature right now, which will significantly, I wouldn't say curtail, but it will restrict and regulate the use of SROs. So just something we need to be aware of. Okay.
So for capital, we've been meeting all fall, and I think we've been through every need, and we'll have another meeting in January to kind of prioritize.
Okay. Permanent Town Building Committee?
Yes, I attended the meeting, for the Permanent Town Building Committee, a virtual meeting. And they're moving ahead with the building, the comm tower, communication tower and all of that. It was authorized by special town meeting. And I think the contract was awarded, Board of Selectmen, or excuse me, Select Board approved that, I think, on the 27th of October. They're also moving forward on the amenities building. They're going to, that's on their agenda for their next meeting, which is December the 14th. And then it kind of delayed any look at the center building. I know they debated and they did brief the select board on that. And they were talking about some changes they could make to kind of adjust to the coronavirus or COVID. But I don't think there was any kind of an agreement on any change in square footage. I think they came away with that as we kind of got to look at that in a kind of holistic way of requirements versus space and other projects. There's also the schools that they want to set up that create or construct an admin building. And so they listed a lot of options for that. They were looking for a little bit of guidance. I think the center building is kind of on hold until we take another look at just overall requirements, something especially things like meeting space and how we adjust to the coronavirus. Their next meeting is December the 14th. I'll be attending that virtually. And they're going to discuss the school admin. One of these things is they were concerned about is the school was asking for $90,000 for a feasibility study. There's $100,000 in the recreation department that was previously appropriated for a feasibility study. Nothing's been done on it. And so I think they want to take a look at all of these requirements as one and see if there's any kind of, commonality or any way to work that. And so also on the 14th, they'll be looking at the communication tower update, which that contract was awarded. And then they're also going to talk about the amenities building. So their next meeting is the 14th. I'll be attending that and I'll report on that in our January meeting. Unless Jody has some other comments, I may have missed something, Jody.
Jody?
So I think they also wanted to figure out if 63 Main was going to sell, and I am working on that. They've agreed to shrink the parcel and carve off some of the back for the future. So we're working on that RFP. Right now we needed to get some planning board action and a survey and so on. So I'm working on that. And so I think that's a big part of this. They also want to find out what's going on with Rodenbush, and they did agree to waive the rent payments for the next couple of months and reevaluate. And so we want to understand that and their future. And just as a side note, we also have RFPs out right now to sell 12 North Main and 35 Town Farm. So there's a lot of town properties that we're trying to unload, which would help our free cash situation if any of this happens. So there's a lot of moving parts. I think maybe in January they'll regroup and talk about 55 Main again and the feasibility study once they kind of understand some of these.
CPC? Who's that? Dan?
Yeah, I can touch base on this. The Community Preservation Committee just had their needs assessment on Tuesday night. I didn't attend, so I'm not sure what was presented at that meeting, but we can follow up with them at the next meeting. And all applications are due to accounting on Friday, January 8th.
Any other updates from any other boards or anything? Okay. We move to approval of minutes for October 17th.
I think Jody had something.
Jody, did I miss that?
Well, I was going to mention, since you talked about the Town and School Safety Task Force, that I do not believe that there will be a recommendation for any SROs right now. I think the group decided to kind of put that on the back burner, study it more thoroughly. There's no money to bring anybody on anyway. So I don't believe you're going to be seeing anything like that. And I think Tom does want to come forth in January to school committee and select board. I don't know if that'll happen. But even with the recommendations, unless we're eliminating other positions, there's no way to hire new positions. So that would have to be carefully reviewed. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. I know Dennis mentioned SRO. There's no, there's not going to be any recommendation to hire more SROs right now.
Any other topics, questions? Okay. Minutes.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I just had my interest peaked on the town farm. Did the housing program fall apart, or and it's being sold, or are they still an interested party?
Yeah, go ahead, Jody.
Oh, no, we have a request for proposals out now, and we are hoping that we have a few proposals, but it is for senior affordable housing. The tricky part is they have to pay to construct a new fire training facility, and so that's part of the issue. In the meantime, I am searching for grants, donations, in-kind work to help bring that price down. So we're very hopeful that we're going to get a proposal on that.
Thanks.
And 12 North Main, by the way, for the 5th time that we've been out trying to sell that on that one too.
That would be housing as well?
Anything anybody wants to build there, bring offers.
Is it zoned for anything, or is it zoned for a specific type of usage?
Honestly, it's been so long, I don't know exactly what the zoning is. I would have to check on that, but it could be housing. I mean, there would need to be approvals, but I think people have talked about it for manufacturing, a combination, lots of different uses. I just think we need to get a buyer that's interested, and hopefully we'll get someone on the 5th time out. And if not, the town is facing significant money to tear it down and clean it up, which would be probably well over $1 million. So let's all hope that this happens for us.
Okay, so we'll attempt the 3rd time to go to the minutes. Okay, so does anybody want to discuss about the minutes or
as presented?
Second.
Okay, so I will call Heather.
Yes.
Christina.
Aye.
John.
Yes.
Levi.
Aye.
Beth?
Aye.
Jeff. Jeff.
Aye, sorry, I couldn't hear you there.
Okay. Jake.
Aye.
Dennis.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay. That concludes the agenda. A motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
Heather.
Yes.
Christina.
Yes.
John.
Yes.
Levi.
Yes.
Beth.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Jake.
Aye.
Dennis.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Okay, that concludes the Finance Committee on December 10th, started at 8:30.
Happy holidays, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you.